I'd like to bring in our first practitioner, Michael Ross, who's Senior VP of Technology at Blue Sky Specialty Pharmacy. And he's here to talk to us about his organization has implemented data products. So Mike, let's see, are you on stage? Yeah, you coming there? Great. So as I said, Senior Vice President of Technology at Blue Sky, where he leads digital transformation initiatives impacting pharmacy operations and enhancing patient and physician experiences. His team has built 50 data products that are used to convert into reports used by dozens of salespeople and business executives. So welcome, Michael.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's just dive into it. We've only got about 7 minutes. So you have a mantra to describe your data products. You like to say they're testable, usable, and lovable. Love that. So what does that mean? What does that mantra mean?
Absolutely. When we start applying product management concepts to building data products, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the term MVP. And we just felt like that term means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So we landed on testable, usable, lovable as a way of really looking at the evolution of products and data products specifically along a continuum. So for us, testable is literally we work to put something out there in the hands of users as quickly as possible, almost to the point where we're slightly embarrassed by it. The point is we want to kickstart that conversation as quickly as possible. We want to address data quality issues early. We want to make sure that we're speaking the same language. And so really what we do is we have a tool, Coginity, that we use to run queries, throw it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then we start having those conversations with our users. Through a lot of repeated testing and interactions with users, we in turn get to a usable status. That means that our users can actually use it without our help. They can come in and run queries on Coginity themselves. We can automate a report and send it to them on occasion. We can put it into a web application. Finally, we get to lovable, and that's really where we get sort of the holy grail of our product development lifecycle. It gets to a point where it becomes an indispensable part of our users' daily lives.
That's excellent. So you have product owners for these products. What is the role of that product owner? What do they do or not do in your environment?
Sure. For us product owners, really bridge that gap between our user community and the technical team. They help convert a lot of the requirements and needs that we identify in our user testing and translate them into executable work items and tasks for our engineering team. So in a lot of ways, they wear a BA hat and do a lot of the things that you might find in a traditional product owner or Scrum Master type mindset in an Agile team.
Yeah, terrific. How many product owners do you have?
At present, we have 2, hoping to add a 3rd and possibly a 4th next year.
Did they come with product management experience or did they kind of learn on the job?
Yes, they did. We are a specialty pharmacy working in healthcare. We were fortunate enough to find an experienced and seasoned product owner, product manager from another healthcare company, technology company. And then we have another one who doesn't quite have the healthcare background, but he does, in fact, have product owner experience at another SaaS product company.
Excellent. So you've paired those product owners with a product council. Can you explain the role of that council and who sits on it and how it works?
Sure. Yeah, our product council is largely comprised of senior leaders within the organization. So we have a VP of pharmacy operations. We have various trade relationships that we have in our industry. We have specific people involved and tasked with building relationships with insurance providers for our pharmacy. And they all sit on our product council. They tend to drive a lot of the traditional product management conversations, interacting with outside users that we interact with the pharmacy. And they also help us align and drive priorities. Key challenge that we have at the pharmacy is we get a lot of requests every day for various reports, for various insights, for pieces of information. What the product council does is really serve as a steering committee. Not only do they provide a lot of that insight into the market, but they also help us drive priorities. They let us know what we should focus on that will provide the most value and benefit for our organization, and what we should probably not be focusing on, even though we're going to get a lot of questions or requests around it.
Yeah, so let's go back to your data products. So just to be clear, I mean, when you're creating a data product, it sounds like it's kind of a SQL query that will be the foundation for a report. Is that true?
That's how most of our data products start. We spend a lot of time in that testable phase, not only trying to understand what we need to deliver, but really to get to the heart of the need, pain, or problem we're trying to solve for. And so very often our data products start as a very simple SQL query. We take a data set, we put it into Excel, pretty it up, and we send it out. Now, a lot of those products evolve. We do have a set of web applications that support what we call our engagement platform. And so a lot of times these data products will evolve into screens or interactive features in those engagement tools.
So it starts out as a query, turns into an Excel report, and then maybe becomes part of a larger application. I think the point is that it's going to be something that the company uses on a long-term basis to drive its business. Is that true?
100%. I think my experience in other organizations, and something we strive for at Blue Sky to avoid, is to cut out a lot of the non-valuable work activities. And so by maintaining continuous alignment, I always like to say we can only go as fast as our weakest link. And with a lot of these types of programs, I find that our weakest link is, in fact, our relationship with the broader business community. So if we're aligning ourselves in the areas of the organization that we can provide the most value, it almost makes the funding conversation easy. We go so far as to even align our staffing and our expenses with those prioritization concerns. So hopefully my product owner isn't having to deal too much with that stuff where we're focusing on data products for trade, for example. We're aligned with the trade part of the organization. We're not trying to make week-to-week prioritization decisions with things that aren't related to trade.
Right. So you have 50 data products now. Does the maintenance of those data products impinge on your development team's ability to create new ones?
It can, and it's certainly a lot of where my development team spends a lot of time talking. We use that continuum and life cycle also as an opportunity to discuss how can we make sure this is reliable? How can we make sure the data is accurate? How can we make sure that we can support this? And so by starting early and starting small, we manage those conversations in parallel with our business feature capability conversations and looking for opportunities to consolidate and generate reuse.
Have you ever retired a data product yet?
Yes, actually, a lot of our requests or a lot of our data products quickly realized that they were a very short-term need. There's not a lot of reusability. They don't align with the evolving view of how our company views claims data, for example, or various like PDC calculations that we use in the pharmacy. And so those things just don't survive much past the testable phase, and they sort of fall by the wayside and retire.
Well, it's good to hear. Have you gone through the full life cycle?
Yeah.
Because most companies don't ever retire anything that they build, and then it just gets in the way and clogs up the pipes.
Yeah, I find that that's usually a direct result of over-investing and overdeveloping too soon, taking our users too literal. I get asked for complex, snazzy dashboards all the time, and I think at this point, most of our users and executives have realized the first thing they're going to get is an Excel spreadsheet from us.
Yeah, good question from the audience, from Sandro. How does the Data Product Council align with the Data Governance Council, assuming you have a Data Governance Council?
Yeah, these are all great questions for much larger organizations. We are just not at that point yet. So our data our product council is largely comprised of people who would also be part of our data governance council. As we grow, I envision those roles to start to diverge. Those are when we would start splitting off, say, a data governance council.
Yeah, two questions that are related. The structure that you're outlining helps a lot with securing funding, and who pays for your data products and quantifies their value?
So who pays for our data products? It largely just comes out of the core budget. We centrally manage our budgets, and I work hand in hand with our CFO on a regular basis, ensuring that we're aligned with the core strategic priorities of the organization makes those conversations with our CFO much simpler. As far as how do we quantify that value, we actually tend to operate off of McKinsey's 3 Horizons model. So we maintain very specific focus on what is our core business, what are the business areas we're looking to extend into, and then what are our big dreams that are farther down the road. And we try to ensure that we maintain specific goals and strategies in each and make sure that our technology budgets are well aligned.
Okay, last question. How do you define types of data products, technical versus data? What are the differences between technical product manager and data product manager? Maybe that last question is the most relevant, if there is a distinction in your organization between the two.
Yeah, for our situation, I would say there's not a distinction. There's certainly going to be a distinction in other types of businesses, but our core focus and our core product is bettering our patient lives, making sure that if you have a prescription for Humira, how do we make sure that we can get that filled in a timely fashion and help you work through all of the red tape that's involved in the healthcare industry. So that has always been and will continue to be what our core product is. And then we have to align our organization to match. And so a lot of those traditional product roles, especially as you look at product management roles, we lean on the business rather than try to self-start and self-fill those roles inside of our technology organization.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time today and your insights. I appreciate your presence here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. So our next practitioner speaker is Anupam Nandwana. And as he's coming to the stage, I'll introduce him. He's the CEO of P360, a decades-old software company that specializes in business technology for pharmaceutical and life sciences companies worldwide. The company helps customers create golden records that get inserted into reports and applications used by data analysts, data scientists, salespeople, and back office staff. Welcome, Anupam.
Thank you, Wayne. Pleasure to be here.
Well, terrific. So let me ask, you're in the life sciences, pharmaceutical industry. Why is it important for those types of companies to embrace data products?
So one of the things about the pharmaceutical industry in specific is one of the richest industry from the data perspective. They have more data and everything they do is driven by data decisions. The companies itself are usually like 3-part companies. They are in the clinical trials, supply and manufacturing, and the commercialization. So even though they all report on the same balance sheet, they operate largely independent of that, with the one common goal of making patient lives better and educating HCPs, the healthcare professionals, to provide the service they need for that patient. And while doing that, as the science is evolving, the finding the patient, finding the doctors, and educating them is becoming increasingly challenging. The area we specialize on is the commercial side of the equation. So if I were to summarize, it's like the informed decision making all the way from trials to the commercial launch. It's significant. And things like data product helping tremendously in getting the care patients need as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so let's drill down into your data products. When you say that, what are you specifically thinking about? What is a data product to you in P360?
Thank you. It's a great question. So if I may take 30 seconds of your an audience time to explain. So if you just take like a commercial organization in a typical pharmaceutical company, they have several independent groups which operate under that. You have sales, you have marketing, you have market access, you have patient access, managed care. So these groups, even though they share a lot of data assets underlying, they kind of have different objectives and different usage of data. And by the nature of the business, it ends up becoming very siloed and fragmented because everybody's asked to do their job. And that creates a significant challenge in terms of how the governance is done. And if you ask me what's the biggest barrier, I would say governance is a challenge. Fragmentation and silos are a challenge. Because of the amount of data they process, the data quality is consistently an issue. And if you take outside of the technical challenges, there is a huge regulatory burden on these companies. There are risks. So ability to make a change is not like as easy as like if you would have in the retail or manufacturing, where you have a lot more liberty because you are answerable to FDA, you are answerable to all the local authorities, you are talking about people who and their health and their lives. So risk taking ability is not as big as some of the other industry. And that creates this combination of barriers and adoption challenges, which you have to overcome. But I am very hopeful and very optimistic about how the data products get adopted and solving some of these challenges.
So in the slide that is on the screen right now, I wrote the type of data product is a golden record or master data that gets inserted into reports and applications. Is that a fair statement of what you think a data product is?
Yeah, as trivial as that statement might sound, let me double click on it. If you think about a master record of a healthcare professional, a doctor, there are so many elements to that doctor. What specialty they practice in? Was that specialty approved by FDA for our drug promotion? Are my reps trained into talking to the institution we are? Because you could legally get tagged as promoting your drug for an off-label promotion, and no company ever wants to get tagged that because that's a legal issue. So down to that level, so now you have this one healthcare professional record which can which gets used in every single data analysis, that whether it's an aggregated or detailed analysis, impacts everything you do. Same thing, if you bring in the patient data, like you were talking with Mike about specialty pharmacy. Pharma companies are not supposed to know who the patient is. So buying the data which is anonymized, and there are engines out there which hide the PHI and PIIs, taking all that data to make the business decision where patients are, where the doctors are, it's huge in terms of the impact. I will give an example. There are some companies we are working with, their drugs have less than 1,000 patients all over the country, or there might be other drugs which might have a couple thousand patients. So when you talk about the importance of data and the master data, how this all is linked, that gives you an idea how important and critical that is.
Yeah. So it seems like these master records really are foundational for almost any data product that you would create in the organization. So create a strong foundation, get your reference data, your master data standardized, bake it into a product, and then you can do lots of magical things after that.
Right, because at that point you have liberty, like they buy a lot of data externally and generate a lot of data internally. Now, if you have your master data side standardized as a data product, whether it's your payer PBM hierarchy, whether you're HCPs, now you are playing with such an advantage, so you don't have to worry about those things.
Yeah. So what are the biggest barriers to the adoption of data products that you're seeing out there as you roll these out?
I think one which is the technical, is like sheer amount of data, right? Like how big and complex the footprint is in some of these pharma companies itself is a barrier. And then a common ownership, like you could have different owners. IT is not like what you were explaining earlier. IT cannot be the owner of the data product, right? IT can facilitate it. You need business users and the subject matter expert who understand it, but sometimes the authority or lack of technical expertise on their end could become a barrier. Cost and infrastructure is always an issue. Also, most pharma companies, at least mid to big size companies, they operate at a global scale. Some of them operate in 80, 90, 100 countries. So the decision making is not as simple as, okay, I'm going to change X, Y, or Z, or I'm going to adopt a tool because this works for me. It has a significant impact. And if you step outside of just commercial side and some of the other areas, like if you take manufacturing as an example, and I'm sure a lot of people in audience would have heard stories about vaccines during the COVID times, how they were manufactured. There are plants in 30, 40 different locations, and there is a whole, this mixture of things moving from one place to other. How you manage that, the sheer complexity of the business operation itself is a hurdle sometimes.
Yeah, so trying to standardize on a golden record across hundreds of systems and stakeholders is daunting. And I suspect that you're probably relying on artificial intelligence to help at least reconcile what's out there and present something to these stakeholders for their approval and agreement.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. If there was one industry which would benefit from AI driving a lot of this, is probably the life sciences, the pharma. I'm sure everybody will get the benefit of it. It's the probably lowest hanging fruit from the industry perspective. Yeah.
Right. So assuming these pharma life science companies have this foundation built on these types of data products, how will this transform what they do? That's my last question.
So the transformation is pretty upfront and straightforward. Getting drugs to the patient who need, getting the education to the doctors who need the material and the information they need, communicating with insurance companies. Like, I will give an example. Sometimes it could take up to 2 months just for a prior authorization approval process for some drugs for patient to come on board after their doctor has diagnosed and prescribed them certain. So reducing that onboarding time in those kind of situation. There is a blog on NIH website, and it's a fascinating stat. Like 1 day of delay in a clinical trial could cost a life sciences company anywhere from $600,000 per day all the way up to $8 million. So think about the just dollars and cent impact. It's like, of course, the business and the life impact. You also have a commercial interest in making these processes better.
Well, terrific. Anupam, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your insights.
Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.